I'm Dr. Randy Neal, and in this video I'm going to answer kind of one of the most common questions that I get in the outpatient or even inpatient practice is, how long before my medications actually start to work? And the honest answer is it varies from person to person, but it also varies on what we're trying to accomplish and what we're actually treating, because obviously in psychiatry we can treat things such as depression, which the medications in that sometimes can take days, weeks for them to kick in. There's the anxiety medications that can also take a while to before you see a change with those, but then there's some short-term anxiety medications that we can use in the meantime to kind of bridge that gap. If you're treating like a mood disorder, like a bipolar, some of those medications do kick in rather quickly. Most of them take they call it 4 or 5 half-lives, which basically means, roughly, it could take 4 to 5 days if it's a 24-hour half-life. So it could take days, but we expect to see that to occur in a much shorter time period. So we're treating psychosis, if someone's seeing things, hearing things, disorganized thinking. The medications for that work on the dopamine, and those do not take very long to work in a lot of people, but there's a lot of variety of medications to choose from in that category as well. The one that has pretty much the quickest response, the one that I like to work with a lot, are the ADHD medications. Usually those, most of those are stimulants, and so you can really see a difference. If you have the true diagnosis of ADHD, using those types of medications can really be impactful. Obviously you can really see a change in a very short amount of time. Pretty much the most common medication that I think we use in most of the outpatient practice is for depression and anxiety. And like we mentioned, those medications can take, by the book standards, can take up to 3 to 6 weeks in some people. But I'd say don't lose the big picture of that the medication is more of a supplement, and it's a supplement to the therapy, to learning the strategies that can make a change in your, they call it the psychosocial aspect of your life, more in your personal life. Seeing the patterns and then understanding, what put you in that position to be in that same type of pattern that you've been experiencing. So again, the medication is more of a supplement, but keep in mind that also the medications, most of them they're called serotonin-specific reuptake inhibitors for depression and anxiety. And what that means is it keeps your own serotonin levels around longer. So it's not like the medication actually makes or spits out serotonin. It just takes the serotonin that your body makes and actually allows it to kind of linger longer. And the theory behind that is, at least the theory that I believe in, is that when you're doing the strategies and you're making those new pathways in the brain with the new types of thinking in those stressful situations, is the extra serotonin can kind of facilitate that process in building those kind of new neural connections and such. So, those medications do take a little bit of time because it's mainly that you're waiting for it to allow it that opportunity to help in that area. But keep in mind that to make the serotonin naturally in your body, it's made through the protein. It's made through dietary input per se. Is that some of the precursors include vitamin D. So if you're low in vitamin D, which is a hormone in the body where there's a rather significant percent of the pathways in the body need vitamin D to actually work. So if you're low in vitamin D, and you can kind of think about this, if you're low in vitamin D and your body has to say, look, I got to use vitamin D to make energy to survive, or I'm going to use the vitamin D to repair DNA and stuff. Between those two, the body's going to say, look, I know we only got a little bit of it, even though you might be on the low side. Well, that little low chunk is just going to go toward the ATP, making energy so you can survive. And all those other pathways, those secondary pathways, perhaps the ones that are for feeling good and such, kind of take a back seat to it. So it's important that you have, obviously, good nutrition. It's also important that you get your vitamin D levels, make sure they're appropriate. Another one is magnesium. going back to vitamin D, there's some articles out there that say that there's a large chunk of the population that's deficient in that because we stay out of the sun, we work inside, we use all the sunscreens and such, so a lot of us are deficient in that. And with magnesium's at the center of the chlorophyll molecule, and a lot of us just don't like to eat those green leafy vegetables. But that's another one it's a cofactor for all those pathways to make these nutrients, to make the serotonin. We need those vitamin D and the magnesium to do that. So it's very important in the nutrition aspect, and I think it's something that's quite overlooked. But it also can impact how long it takes these medications to actually work. Now, some things you should kind of talk to your provider about, whoever you choose to be your prescriber, is to ask them, how long do you expect me to be on this medication? How long do you expect this medication to work? Obviously, what are the most common side effects? And then ask them if they've ever changed people off these medications and tried something else. And ask them at what point would you consider this medication a failure in terms of a response. What should I expect? Another question is to ask them, will this medication over time have a wearing off effect? How often do you anticipate increasing doses? And these are just questions that you're kind of looking for the provider to answer. You're kind of forming that relationship, because these are questions that may come up in the future. One that's not a very common question to ask is, will this medication show up on any type of drug screen, even a false positive? When it comes to the depression, anxiety medications, there are several out there that if you really research that, they do show up on drug screens as positive, whether it's for a stimulant. Even an NMDA sometimes shows up positive when people are just on a couple of those types of medications. But once again, it's all about just being comfortable with your prescriber and asking them those questions. So to answer the original question from this video of how long does it take for medications to actually have an effect or kick in, again, it just varies on what we're trying to treat: depression, anxiety, mood, psychosis, or ADHD. And so there's a variation right there. Your own nutritional habits could make a difference, and most importantly, it's what you're doing with the medication. I think that can have the most impact, which goes back to the to finding that therapist that you can really connect with. So I'd recommend, before you find a prescriber, someone to do medications with you, maybe have a list going in. Write these down and make sure that you feel comfortable kind of sharing those with them, and make sure that you can find someone that's willing to give their opinion and work with you. So it's all about moving forward.